Right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, for footballpakistan.com FPDC. This is the editor Elias, and today we have a very distinguished guest, Mr. James Shan, or Jimmy as he's often called, who's currently the manager at English National League side Solihull Moors. Jimmy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.
Wonderful. So, FPDC, we usually cover Pakistani-related football content. And, we often talk about the issues of Pakistani football at home and also Pakistani origin football personalities and football moves abroad as well. So, James, can you please tell us about your family background for people who may not know who you are in the sense of what your link with Pakistan is?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so my grandfather was from Pakistan. He met my grandmother in Liverpool. They lived in Liverpool for a short while before coming down to Birmingham to start a family. And probably some 65, 70 years ago now, they found a home in Smallheath in Birmingham, which is a stone's throw away from Birmingham City's football ground, and had 9 children before my grandfather decided to go back to Pakistan. So obviously I'm aware and very, very proud of having that heritage. I probably only actually met my granddad a handful of times. So, when he'd come back to reconnect with the family, or, dare I say, for funerals and things like that. So it's something, as I said, I'm aware of, especially listening to my father, my aunties and my uncles, talk about a lot of the struggles, and you can appreciate, back in that time, the amount of racism, and issues they would have went through. So it's obviously something I'm very, very proud to have that heritage.
Absolutely. And I think this is something which is fairly common among, South Asian diaspora in the UK and other parts of Europe and the Western world in general as well, because, the kind of attitudes that they had to face, especially the first generation immigrants who came in like 50, 40, 60 years ago, and the kind of issues that even the current generations have to face in terms of how they can adjust and contribute well in society. Did your grandfather ever mention where he was from in Pakistan? So that just, because Pakistan is a huge country. So did he ever mention where he was from actually in Pakistan, which city or which part of the country?
No. So I know that when he went back over, he went to live in Kashmir.
Mm-hmm.
So originally I'm not too sure, but when he did go back over, he went and lived in Kashmir. Where about exactly, I have no understanding of now.
I can probably assume that he probably was places like Mirpur and all those in Azad Kashmir, because Mirpur, which is a city in Azad Kashmir, which is a part of Pakistan, currently administered by Pakistan, part of Pakistan, it has a significant Asian diaspora in the UK, and a significant number of Pakistanis come from that little part of Azad Kashmir, which is Mirpur and its surrounding areas. So that's always good to know. So, Jimmy, how did you join football as a player, and how did you eventually become as a coach as the years progressed?
Okay, yeah. So, like many young aspiring lads in Birmingham, I wanted to become a professional footballer. I played for various local teams, aspiring to impress, a scout on the side of the pitch who might snap me up and take me to a professional football club. I had lots and lots of trials, really, from probably the age of about under 12s through to about under 15s. And under 15, I managed to land myself a 2-year contract at Walsall. Unfortunately, I broke my ankle in my last year at Walsall, to try and earn a scholarship to become a full-time footballer. And really from after that injury, I think looking back, I probably wasn't quite the same player. Lacked a little bit of strength, maybe even lacked a little bit of confidence, in terms of, thinking that maybe I was always quite what I'd call quite a technical player. But I had a little bit of tenacity as well, and I think that the edge of that tenacity was taken away, maybe with subconsciously thinking that injury may reoccur, and so from not being taken on at Walsall, I went and played for a couple of local non-league teams. Again, I was picked up by about 4 or 5 football clubs to go on trial, and it just never materialised, and kind of fell into coaching at the age of 21. I was fortunate to do a coaching qualification at Birmingham City's training ground. They offered me a job to work in their community scheme, so working at grassroots level, coaching, taking over PE lessons and working on soccer camps. And then from there, I transitioned to work at the academy part-time before going in full-time at Birmingham. obviously before I went to West Brom and spent 13 years at West Brom.
Wonderful. And it's an interesting journey because a lot of young players who try to become professionals, and a kind of a freak injury, a kind of a freak incident often derails their chances to become full-time professionals. And we all know that not everyone can become a professional player full-time because of various issues. And it's always a good thing that, young kids often use coaching experiences and qualifications as an outlet to remain with the game for many, many years to come. So it's interesting that you moved from Birmingham City. You joined them as a part-time coach, eventually moved to a more full-time position, and eventually you joined West Bromwich Albion. So West Bromwich Albion is essentially the perennial yo-yo club, as many people in the media would put it, that they're often trying to win promotions to the Premier League, which they often do, but then they face relegation struggles and they go back down to the Championship or the old second division or the old first division when the Premier League established. So they've often been going up and down, up and down. So how was your experience been with West Brom as a coach in their academy, and how did you transition to the more senior reserve or senior level coaching positions in the club when you were there at West Brom?
Okay, so my first role at the club was I went in as a performance coach, which was a little bit of a made-up position, I think just to get me at the club. And that enabled me to work with under 7s all the way through to under 16s. So it enabled me to make lots of mistakes and to try and experiment and understood how those different age phases, how they would take on board information at what level, what rate. So it kind of gave me a good scope of working with different age groups for me then to focus and think, right, then if I'm going to be successful long term, do I see myself being an elite coach with a younger age group, or do I want to go top end? And for me, I always wanted to work with the elder players at the academy. I think probably more so because my brain works very much tactically. I like to think I'm quite a decent problem solver, and having those tactical experiences with the elder kids always was the key to really challenge me, to give me that stimulus. So I decided quite early on that I wanted to progress and work with the older age group. So I had quite a natural progression at West Brom, where I was the director of their under 12 to under 16 program. Spent 4 years doing that before moving up the age phase again, where I became under 18 coach. Had another 3 or 4 years at that. The next natural progression then was working under 23s. And if I'm honest with you, I never, when I took the 23s, I didn't really have any intent to go and work with the seniors. Because obviously, an opportunity arose when Alan Pardew was relieved of his duties, and Darren went in as caretaker manager and asked me to step up with him. So, it was kind of a situation that was presented out of the dark. And, as soon as I went and worked with the seniors, again, I kind of knew that was my next natural progression. And, I'd probably looking back, probably had, I spent an awful long time working as a youth developer, working with the academy players, and again, wanted that next challenge and that next stimulus. And that came from first team football.
Wonderful. And because that you were the first team coach under the caretaker managership of Darren Moore, and this is, the end of 2017-18 season in the Premier League, and West Brom, as I mentioned, as a yo-yo club, they were struggling to maintain Premier League status. So after the sacking of Alan Pardew. So you, and with Darren Moore, you have to go to Old Trafford to face Manchester United, who back then were managed by Jose Mourinho, and they were trying to chase Manchester City for the Premiership title. And you went there to Old Trafford, and West Brom, I think, if I'm not wrong, they registered their first ever victory in the Premiership at Old Trafford against Manchester United in modern years. And you were on the bench with Darren, and what went right that day for West Brom for that historic victory?
Yeah, I think less so of the day and more so the build-up and the week. And one thing that I'll always talk about Darren in as a positivity is an unbelievable man manager and man motivator. And I think Darren's mentality rubbed off on the players in terms of would have put so much work in the week in terms of previewing Manchester United, constructing the game plan, obviously coaching, delivering the game plan. It was a case that we were travelling up north to go and play Manchester United. Not to be there to make up the numbers on the day. There to perform, and I think that was the final message that Darren gave the players in the hotel, that, you know, be positive. We've worked. We've got a game plan. Stick to the game plan. You know, and hopefully we'll come away with some positivity. And unfortunately for ourselves, and you know, the game plan worked perfect. We stripped Man United of their strengths. We had to defend for large parts of the game and defend very, very compact. But also on the turnover, we knew that we could cause Manchester United some problems, and we had 2 or 3 really good opportunities. I think in the end it was second phase of a set play which got us the goal. It was a Jay Rodriguez goal. I think everything was right. You know, the mood was obviously whenever you're a caretaker manager, and I found this in my time, that you know you're always going to get an uplift because you'll do something slightly different. And obviously Darren had that uplift in his time as a caretaker manager, and that Manchester United game really was a key moment in trying to instill some belief in terms of, you know, the club and the players had gone through a terrible period of not winning games. So obviously we had a clean sheet. We had 3 points on the table. It was done on a massive stage away at Old Trafford, as you said, under those circumstances, where they're chasing Manchester City against, you know, one of the world's best managers and best coaches. So, you know, that was a real kickstart to try and see if we could salvage something from the season, but also hold on to some kind of belief that we had a fighting chance of Premier League survival also.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think West Brom still had to go down because other results didn't go their way. But Darren Moore, I think, continued the following season as manager, and you were competing for playoff positions, or at least, you know, either automatically by winning the championship or finishing second, or getting a playoff spot. But then things didn't work out for him as well, and he got relieved of his duties. And then you stepped up as interim manager, and you took West Brom all the way to the playoff finals, and you met some interesting teams. I think at that time, Marcelo Bielsa was Leeds United manager for the first season at that time, and they were favorites to win, you know, at least a playoff position. But unfortunately, their season went off on the wrong end, and you reached the playoffs, but you lost the final. And then, you know, how did that feel, coming from the high of beating United at Old Trafford to not winning the playoff, you know, to get going back to the Premiership in 2019? How did that feel for you?
Yeah, again, it was you know, it was a position that got thrown onto me because, again, it was an unexpected thing that Darren would be relieved of his duties. And then also, if I'm honest with you, because I was part of Darren's staff, I thought that maybe when Darren went, that would end my time at the club. So to be given that opportunity, first and foremost, was difficult, because I classed Darren as a close friend, not just a working colleague. But again, it was kind of something that was presented to me and something that I took to very, very, very easily and quite smoothly. So I transitioned from being a first team coach, I'd like to think, to being the one who has to make all the key decisions, who has to lead everything. So, you know, under Darren, don't get me wrong, you know, I had a say, and you know, and I'm always grateful to Darren that he gave me plenty of opportunity to work with the players on the grass and also in team meetings. But now it was myself, you know. So again, it was kind of strange, because I think everybody expected that run to be maybe 2 or 3 games max, but in the end, it was 10 championship games, and then, you know, obviously both the legs in the playoff semi-final against Villa. So to answer your question, I've never felt so emotionally drained after a game because of the result. You know, and I've never felt so down and negative in terms of, you know, knowing that if we'd have beaten Aston Villa, would have took the team to Wembley, you know, with a chance of getting promoted to the Premier League. So, yeah, I guess that's part and parcel of football, you know, the highs and the lows. And I guess the most successful people and people advise you that don't get too high with the highs and don't get too low with the lows. But it was a difficult one for me as well, because I kind of knew that potentially that would spell the end of my time at the football club. And if I wanted to pursue a career as a manager, then maybe I'd need to you know, look to follow a different pathway.
Yeah, and then it was unfortunate, but I guess that's the way how football works, and especially managers. If you don't get a particular result, the board members or the shareholders would want to change things up, and eventually it's the manager and the coaching staff that are often, you know, relieved of their duty so that some new person can come. I think Slaven Bilic is the current manager, and he helped West Brom to win automatic promotion this season. So I guess that worked out for them, I guess. So eventually,
he's done a fantastic job.
Yeah, absolutely. He's done a fantastic job in the back in the Premier League for 2020-21. And let's see how this goes, because Bilic has had a good experience, both as a player for Croatia and also as a manager for them, for other teams as well. And he's done a fantastic job. And I think they're doing quite well. So after you got relieved of your duties as West Brom, you had to step a couple of levels down and you went to non-league, And
Yeah.
how was that experience for you being managing, as a full time, as the first team manager, the head, the boss in the non-league for you, and compared to the experiences that you had, let's say playing in managing in the Championship or in the Premier League, how much of a difficult challenge or different challenge it was managing in the non-league in England?
I'd like to think I'm quite a grounded person. So, and obviously I'd played non-league myself. So I knew what to expect in terms of, potentially facilities, the club's infrastructure, what clubs will have and what they won't have. And for me, it was I went into Kidderminster Harriers before I went to Solihull, and I spent 9 weeks there, volunteering as a pair of hands to help them out until I knew what the next chapter was in store for myself. So, I'd spent 5 months out the game, and I'd done little bits of coaching here and there in terms of offering academy CPD events. I went into a local professional football club and delivered full sessions for them. They were under 18s, just to get back on the grass. So, first and foremost for me was I was grateful that I had an opportunity at Kidderminster, who were a full-time football club, to go in every single day and do the thing that I enjoy the most, getting on the grass and work with players. So, as I said, I knew what to expect. And it was more of, I probably took more positives than I did negatives in terms of, I just wanted to get back on the grass and work with players and, and kind of sharpen my skill set up again, waiting for that next opportunity. So, I've said on a couple of interviews that I'm not a football snob. All I want to do genuinely is I want to get a bag of footballs. I want to get onto a pitch, and work with players, because that's where I think I work my best, and I'm most definitely where I'm most happiest.
Yeah, that's fantastic, And as a member of FPDC, over the last couple of years, I've been following Pakistani football and also Pakistani origin players abroad since at least 2003. So I think I think all of us at FPDC, me and my the staff in Germany and the UK, etc., they have gotten a deep sense of respect for lower league football in Europe, especially in England, because you realize that not everyone can become a Premiership level footballer, but the Standard and Championship, League One, League Two, Conference, which was the old Conference at that time, Conference North, Conference South, etc. These are still very competitive leagues, and they do offer. Sure, the standard of football may be quite different compared to the Premiership, but the level of competition and the level of dedication that they have for the game, even in non-league football, is something to cherish, something to actually celebrate. So you eventually joined Solihull Moors, I think, in the early half of 2000. When the season was at its halfway point, if I'm not wrong, and you were fighting for promotion spots. And I think I can ask a question about the actual overall conference, the National League level of the kind of promotion spot that they have. But you were close to fighting for winning promotion, at least for the playoff spots in the National League. But eventually COVID happened. And then the season had to be essentially ended on a points per game basis, which meant that you missed out on a promotion spot, at least, or to play in the playoffs. How was that the right decision for you, given the situation which was in the UK at that time? And is it something that a team and players can learn from, and managers can learn from, because of this was an unprecedented event which actually took place? How did you feel when the season had to be essentially stopped on a points per game basis, and that's it, no playoff spot for you?
Yeah, I think if I'm being honest with you, I think probably that was the fairest outcome of what they could have done. I think, as you say, nobody's ever faced this situation before, and I think, us speaking as a football club, that let's just say that there's a second wave. God forbid it doesn't happen, but if there's a second wave, we know that we've got to, if we complete a third of the season or 2/3 of the season, we've got to make sure that we hit the ground running and we get as many points on the table, on the board, as we possibly can. So I think with the overall outcome, I'd agree with it. I don't think there's anything else they could have done. The disappointing thing for me was, I'd only been in the building 4 or 5 weeks, and we were looking to change the style of play. Obviously my methods are slightly different to Tim's, and Tim's slightly different to mine. I'm not saying that he's a right and mine are wrong, or vice versa, so it was frustrating, because I just got the sense that, that that 3 or 4 weeks of really good work on the grass would started to click, and the lads had started to understand the way that I wanted to do things. And also, we'd recruited, and invested heavily in signing Adam Rooney from Salford. So, we had 2 or 3 loan signings that we could have got over the line that would have made us very, very competitive. So for me, obviously, natural disappointment that we didn't have the opportunity to, show the owners of the football club and the chairman of the football club, the supporters of the football club, the direction I want the club to go in, and also have an opportunity, to win some games and to try and get out of the National League and make history by taking Solihull Moors into the Football League.
That's one of the ambitions of many non-league clubs, especially who are still competing in the National League, or the old conference as it's called. Do you feel that the standard of football in this league now is, because like I said, you mentioned you played in non-league football as a player when you were in your youth, and you also now are managing at non-league clubs. Do you think, because I read an article a couple of months back from, I think, BBC, in which a lot of non-league managers were saying that, the National League, the old conference, deserves at least one more automatic promotion spot, because, many of the clubs are now full-time. They're actually full-time professional clubs over there now. They're no longer, many of them are now semi-professional as they once were. And they're ambitious. They've got good owners. They've got ambitious plans. But only having an automatic promotion spot for the champions and the playoff spots for the teams which I think finished from 2nd to 6th or 7th is a bit unfair, because then, I think the National League is trying to lobby to the FA and the Football League in general that, we need another one more automatic spot so that there's more incentive for clubs to perform. Do you feel that now is the time for National League, the conference, to get that second automatic spot so that there's more competition and more ambition for clubs to have a pathway to enter the Football League eventually?
Yeah, just going back to what you said, I mean, there are some very, very, very good clubs in the National League, and you look at some of the calibre of players that play at the level, some of the managers, and some of the history of some of the managers, and the CV that some of these managers have. It is a very, very competitive league, and our club. I'm fortunate that I've got owners that are very ambitious, but also very, very sensible. But the end goal is to become a Football League club without a shadow of a doubt. So I would be very, very appreciative if there was another automatic spot in there and 3 clubs were to get promoted. I actually think it's sensible. I think it's fair. Obviously it's a 46 game season within our league. It's a very, very competitive league. It's very, very difficult. Ironically, if you look at our league compared to League Two, you'd probably actually say League Two is an easier league to get out because of how many teams get promoted out of League,
exactly.
out of League Two. And it is a difficult league to get up. So yeah, I mean, I would be very supportive, and I would welcome that second automatic place. And I think looking at the football pyramid and looking, as you said, the investment and the structure of the National League, I think it's a sensible thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. And I have found that, it's a debate which is going to happen, but I hope really that, the National League can get that second automatic promotion spot, so that there is more competition, like I mentioned as well. So let me just take you back a bit when you were working with West Brom. So you were, as part of the academy structure and the youth team structures, you work with the 3 Nabi brothers, Adil, Samir and Rais. Adil is doing quite well finally at OFI Creek in the Super League Greece, and he's been, helped their club survive relegation last season, and this season, at the end of this season, they've gotten a playoff spot for the Europa League for next season as well. So he's doing quite well finally. He hasn't played. He's expressed some interest to play for Pakistan, but it depends how things work out in the Pakistan Football Federation level. But his younger brothers, Samir and Rais, they've actually have played for Pakistan last year, and they played for Pakistan against Cambodia in the World Cup preliminary rounds in 2019. I mean, you probably have heard of that. In Asia, World Cup qualification rounds start very, very early, and the lowest ranked teams, they have a playoff if they want to win. In Pakistan, unfortunately, due to various issues both on and off the pitch, could not do so. So how was it like coaching the 3 brothers, and what did you find interesting about them when they were under your charge at West Brom?
Okay, first and foremost, 3 unbelievable young men. Great characters, great personality, great dedication. To their craft when they were in the academy. And as I said, very, very talented. So the first one that I came across would have been Adil as the eldest brother. For me, Adil has all the talent and all the ability to be a championship player. When kind of over the last 2 or 3 years, I'd spoke to a couple of agents that had been in touch with me, and Jim, we're looking for a number 10, somebody who can create, who can unlock. And Adil at the time was struggling at Peterborough United. Regardless of what size football club in the Championship it was, I always threw his name, and I've always been a big admirer of Adil. I think he's technically outstanding. He obviously scores and creates an awful lot of goals. His football intelligence is very, very good. I think actually, in 10 years' time, plus when he decides to retire, I think he will transition into the coaching world very, very easily, because he's a thinker, he's a student of the game, and he's very, very intelligent. So Adil was the first one that I came across, and like you say, he's had a terrific season with Crete, and hopefully they can qualify for the Europa League. I know there's been some interest in Greece from so-called bigger clubs in the Greek Super League for him, and I'm just hoping that he has an opportunity one day to come back to England and and show people what he's about and what he can do, because I've worked with lots and lots of players who have gone on to have very, very successful careers, and maybe don't have quite that Adil Nabi ability. So I'm hoping he, for himself and for his family, he has the opportunity to come back to England one day and show what a talent he can be. And the other two boys also, they've always been three highly rated players within their own age groups in the academy. So Adil would always be in the top 2, top 3 of his age group. Samir within his age group, and the same with younger Rahish. It's kind of a little bit surprising that Samir and Rahish haven't probably kicked on in the levels we anticipated as youth developers. I actually took Samir into Kidderminster Harriers when I was at Kiddie, and he came in, but Samir had 6 months out of the game. So that ability to get up to match fitness, it took him probably 2 or 3, 4 weeks longer than we thought it would be. And then, unfortunately for Samir, not knowing it would be my final game, he tore his hamstring. So that set Samir back. But yeah, as I said, 3 talented boys who dedicated to the craft, and hopefully Samir and Rahis find a way back into the football pyramid at whatever level, and again they can grow and they can develop.
Yeah, hopefully that's something which a lot of people have been hoping and wishing for, because they're talented kids. Adil can easily, I think, hit the big time the way he's done in Greece at the moment, and hopefully, like you mentioned, that he can probably come back to England and show his worth and what he's learned, his struggles, etc., and also his experience playing in Greece at the moment, and that would be something good. And I hope Samir and Rahis can also find their way as well. Like I said, anywhere in the football pyramid would be good for them as well. I have noticed that in the last couple of years, a lot of young English coaches and managers, especially those who've been in youth teams or those who've even coached in non-league teams or lower division teams, they have started getting more and more offers and opportunities to coach abroad. For example, Jamie Day, a former Arsenal trainee, and who ended up at different clubs in the non-league. He's currently the manager since 2018 at Bangladesh. He's the manager of the Bangladesh national team, and he's done fairly well with them as well. So Scott Cooper, who also was non-league experience, but he's been coaching a lot of teams in Asia. He was caretaker and sometimes manager of Philippines. He's currently managing in the Thai Premier League as well. Would you be interested, when the time comes in, if you get a good offer from abroad, to maybe ply your trade coaching or managing a team in, let's say, Asia or in other parts or in other countries in Europe, for example?
Yeah, well, I would never say never. I think, this current moment and stage in my career, I've still got a family that are very, very young. So, the upheaval of travelling and relocating may be something that maybe for another 4 or 5 years we'll put to the back burner. But it's something I'd love to do from a culture perspective, in terms of a new footballing culture. Working with players with maybe different backgrounds, different mentalities, different styles of football. So yeah, it's something I'd definitely like to consider, and something that I would explore. I think with regards to these coaches and managers that are going abroad, I think sometimes maybe that they do that with, maybe sometimes because of the lack of opportunity here in England. It's obviously a very, very competitive industry. It's very, very difficult to to get your foot on that ladder, on that, you know, on that run, and, you know, to show your worth and to climb. So there's been some great examples. Obviously, Graham Potter, you know, probably be the best, most recent example in terms of went across to Sweden, applied his trade there, had a fantastic Europa League run, come across to Swansea, you know, really, I suppose was really a key player in terms of reigniting that Swansea DNA and the style of play and brand of football, and, you know, and currently finds himself managing in the Premier League, you know. So I guess lots of young coaches see that as a route and as a pathway that, you know, maybe sometimes they can be overlooked for certain roles and certain jobs and certain clubs in England. So they'll look to go abroad to see whether they can make a name for themselves and try and form that pathway to get back into the UK and try and build a reputation and career from there. So it's as I said, you know, there's been one or two recent successes. Let's hope, you know, more of these people that are very, very brave and they do pack up and relocate and do go and challenge themselves. Let's hope they have every success that, you know, that they aspire to have and get back to working, you know, maybe in the UK at a better level.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, and I guess this is a perennial question. Maybe, hopefully, in a couple of years down the line, when the family situation can stabilize a bit, and you can actually travel. And I'm just, wishing courses for horses, you know, whatever it is. Would you be up for, let's say, if an offer comes to coach the Pakistan national team?
Of course I would, yeah, 100%. As I said, you know, it's obviously it's part and parcel of my family DNA, and, you know, that would be, I suppose, you know, that as I alluded to earlier, I only met my granddad on a handful of occasions, but you know, I'm sure he'd be very, very proud of even to be considered or offered to, you know, to take up such roles. So yeah, it'd be something I'd consider. I'm very, very much an open-minded person, and, you know, and challenges and things, as I alluded to earlier, things that stimulate me and things that excite me. If those things presented themselves and it was an exciting challenge and, you know, there was some decent players to work with and develop, it'd be something I'd consider 100%.
Absolutely. I mean, if in a couple of years down the line, if this actually happens, I mean, we'd love to see you, you know, managing the Pakistan national team, because this is something which, you know, you have that family background and you have the experience and you have the ambition. And you're fairly young, you know, you have the energy as well for this one. So this is something which the Pakistani national team would definitely need going down in a couple of years from now, especially if the current situation, the Pakistan Football Federation can get stabilized a bit. So
Yeah.
have you been fortunate enough to follow the developments in Pakistani football, either on a fleeting glance or in a more detailed way over the last couple of years? Have you ever come across any kind of tidbits about Pakistani football in recent years?
Yeah, not in great detail. I mean, I obviously follow yourselves on Twitter, on social media. So, you know, if there's anything on your newsfeed that comes up and it intrigues me, I'll click on and have a little read through. So, not in great detail, as I said, you know, just the little bits and pieces that you guys put up on your feed, and, you know, if it grabs my attention, I'll click on another view and have a read.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, because always having a foreign outsider perspective is always good to understand what it is. I mean, whatever you may know of Pakistani football right now, what would be your certain steps which you would advise, or you would something people should do to make football in the country get a bit higher in the notch in terms of what it can be more competitive with in Asian football, at least? What would you advise in terms of development, in terms of recruitment, in terms of, you know, other things, and even administrative things, which you said that, you know, this is certain ideas I have. The PFF and the people in charge of Pakistani football should definitely consider this, because this can work for them.
I think, yeah. I mean, let me give you my experiences of development in England and things like that. I think for many years, England were a little bit of a copycat nation. So, for example, whatever was vogue, whoever won the World Cup or the European Championships, England would gravitate to. Or Holland have won something, or France have won something. What do they do and copy their development models, their systems, their style of play. I think you have to find out what works for you. Obviously, within your country, it's going to be about building from the bottom up. So making sure there's an awareness of football, having programs that enable, you know, first and foremost that participation, but then also have a common thread that runs all the way through grassroots all the way through into the international setup. So, you know, Pakistan football team have an identity, and I think that's key. I think, you know, having that consistency and having your own identity is something that's important, whether it be at international level or even what I'm trying to do at Solihull Moors now. I want Solihull Moors to be known for playing a certain way of football, you know, and if Solihull wasn't to play in Solihull colours and somebody turned up, they'd say that's a Solihull Moors team. And I think the same for you guys. You know, you need to have a very, very clear identity on what you want your football to look like and your brand of football to look like. But also, obviously, with competition, that has to marry the success. You know, so you have to perform in a way that's going to suit your footballers and your players. Gain growth via supporters wanting to watch it and look at it. But of course, like anything in life, it has to be successful.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I guess I can probably conclude this with the one last question that we have. And I think this, having your out as an outsider perspective would always be refreshing for us talking about this. Pakistan has been fortunate enough to discover many Pakistani origin players playing in Europe over the last decade or so. You had Zesh Rehman, who started off at Fulham, and then he went down a couple of leagues for QPR and Brighton, etc. And now he's concluding his career in Hong Kong, and he's now a pro manager as well. You've had former United trainee Adnan Ahmed. You've had Atif Bashir and Amjad Iqbal, who was a trainee at Bradford City, etc. And you've discovered a lot of Pakistani players in Denmark, like Yusuf Butt, Hassan Bashir, and Muhammad Ali, and a lot of Norwegians, like Ghayas Zaid, who's currently at Apoel in Cyprus, but he was on loan to Panathinaikos in Greece and performed quite well over there as well. And Atazaz Hussain, ex-United trainee, coached under Oli Solskjaer there, and then eventually at Molde, and he's their main starter at the moment. So the whole debate, especially in Pakistani football, has been about diaspora players versus homegrown players. You know, what is your view on trying to, you know, I would say as an outsider perspective, how important would it be to find a harmony between, you know, finding the right mix of diaspora players, especially the kind of quality that they have, compared to the domestic, you know, desire of folks back home that, you know, the national team should be, you know, local players who've gone through, you know, the nooks and crannies of the domestic system in Pakistan, but at the same time, they may not have the kind of skill set or development compared to folks playing in Europe may have had. So what would be your views on this one in terms of trying to find a balance between the best diaspora players and domestic players for the national team, for it to become more successful and more harmonized, and something which people can look up to in the years down the line? What would be your views on that?
I think for myself, I always want to work with the best players. So whoever the best players are, for me, it has no bearing on where they're based and where they live. I think if football in Pakistan was to take off and develop, then the local players in Pakistan, the elite ones, will always be moved on, and they'll always go and aspire to go and play at the highest level they possibly can. Which, you know, it has to be said, it's going to be in Europe. You know, it's going to be, you know, the German league, the Belgium league, coming across to the UK, to England. So for me, I think the harmony would arise from having a successful team, regardless of where these players are based. And as I said, you know, your elite players are always going to move from their hometown. They'll always move because, you know, their ability and their personal aspirations and, you know, and what they aspire to achieve in terms of honours, maybe salary and finance, will always find they will have to relocate and they'll have to move. So for me, it's very, very simple. You know, I just try and integrate the best players and getting the best players together. And, you know, and I think that's what international football should be. You know, it should be an honour to represent your football club, but also it's a level of elitism. You know, to play at international level, you are elite in your industry, in your particular field, which gives you that, you know, that wonderful opportunity to go and play for your country and be proud of. I think the way that I thought your question was going to go, with so many players that are based across Europe that could potentially, you know, play for Pakistan, I think maybe a simple way to make it maybe more appealing to get them together in international breaks would be to have a central location in Europe. So if you've got 7 or 8 players, maybe those 7 or 8 players all come to a centralised location. And if there's not an international week in such a where you have friendlies, maybe they meet up and have a small elite training camp, and that way maybe that become more appealing to to the UK based players. Maybe they only have to go on a plane for an hour 90 minutes to Belgium, and they meet up with their counterparts in Belgium, and then also for your homegrown players, it might be a different environment for them, and something different for them to experience also. So I think there's lots and lots of things you guys can, or the federation can sit down and discuss to try and make sure that football Pakistan is as elite as it possibly can be.
Wonderful. That's actually a very good idea of having a central, let's say, training location for all players to come in, and also have a central location where they can meet up and then play a couple of friendly games, do a bit of tours here and there abroad. But that is something which would be, let's for the PFF to decide when the political situation in the Pakistan Football Federation gets, normalized, pardon the pun, regardless of the fact that the normalization committee is currently in charge of it. So one final question, short one. What do you plan, hopefully when the COVID situation stabilizes and you are allowed to go back to training, to preparing for preseason for the next National League season with Solihull Moors, what would be your plans this time to ensure that, hey, this is probably our chance to really push ourselves and get that, a coveted promotion spot to become a football league club? What do you plan to do to this a bit differently, given the experiences that you had over the last couple of months that you've learned now? You said, okay, this works for me, this doesn't work for me. Let's do this one so that we can maximize our gains for the next season.
Yes, obviously, there's going to be lots and lots of things that play the part. So we look at right people, right players, right program. So the right people I'd allude to as being the staff. So it's been a testing time for myself. That there's been, before I went to the football club, there'd been 2 or 3 people that had put their resignation in, so they're no longer at the football club. But that also gave me an opportunity to bring the people that I think probably will fit my DNA and I want to work. So I think we've assembled now, a really competitive backroom staff in terms of a sports scientist, a physiotherapist, a goalkeeping coach, an assistant manager. So I think we've got the right people also to complement what's already at the football club with some very, very good people. So the existing staff that are there, right players will come down to recruitment, so hopefully we identify the players that best fit my profile and the methods and our playing principles. And then the program will come with me. And that's probably the biggest thing. And the biggest thing that probably I took from my time at West Brom, my time out of the game for those 5 months, will be a level of consistency to make sure, I think when I worked in the academy, because you'd have very little information on the opposition, a lot of the coaching and a lot of the program was 80% of what you want to achieve and 20% the opposition. When I went to the first team level, I think that balance shifted and probably went a little bit too extreme the opposite way. So, probably looking at the opposition more than 50%, which meant you're less than 50%. So I think getting that balance, and going back to my roots really, and having a real belief in what I do and how I want the team to play, and of course be respectful of the opposition, but a real genuine strand of consistency that goes throughout the season. And we don't even in, dare I say, in our bad times where we're not getting the results or the performances, we stick to the program, and that level of consistency I'd like to hope over the course of the season will see us at the right end of the table and hopefully competing for automatic promotion.
That'll be wonderful. All the best to you, Jimmy, for the next upcoming season. Hopefully the COVID situation can be improved a bit and football can become back to the lower divisions in England as well. Jimmy, thank you so very much for taking your time out to talk with us in great detail about your experiences, your ideas, your passions in football, how you've evolved as a coach from working for the youth levels to now working in the non-league at the moment, the struggles the challenges you've had to overcome. And just it's always good to know someone who even has an even slight Pakistani background and they're involved in world football. Is something of an honor for us to always talk with them. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for joining us. I'm Ali Hassan, editor of footballpakistan.com at PDC. We had Solihull Moors FC manager Jimmy Shan with us. And I really hope that all of you enjoyed this interview that we had with him. And hopefully, maybe in a couple of years down from now, we might see Jimmy Shan don the Pakistan national team tracksuit and become the manager for us, in a couple of years' time from now. Who knows? So this is us signing out. Thank you so very much.